If you're just joining us, welcome to the program. So we'll be looking at how the major papers are reporting the stories of today. Let's pull up This Day newspaper to begin with. So in This Day, Tinubu names Amupitan as new INEC chairman. NCS endorses choice. Security forces arrest armed robbers involved in death of Arise News Channel anchor Som Tochukwu. Nigeria mourns as paragon of integrity Christopher Kolade dies at 92. Leadership newspaper. Ensure credible elections, new National Electoral Chief Amupitan urged. Vanguard. Accommodation crisis hits varsities, students, parents wail. Reps probe into $18 billion spent on refineries. New Telegraph. OBJ Jonathan Gowan absent as Council of State approves Amupitan new INEC chair. Police suspend enforcement of tinted glass permit. Daily Trust. Amupitan and his record. How should he lead INEC parties? Israel Hamas signed Gaza ceasefire deal. Tinubu pardons Vatsa, Farouk Lawan, others. Tribune, why I picked Amupitan as INEC chair, Tinubu. The Guardian, 85% unreached as Nigeria buckles under massive care gap. Don Rios unregulated tuition hikes, threats to student loan. Daily Independent, opposition others set agenda for new INEC chairman Amupitan. Council approves 1% FAC deduction for police trust fund. Akande blames military takeover for decay in education system. The Punch. Amupitan faces tough test as new INEC chair. 959 for national honors and varsities over TED fund grants. Then let's move to the international papers. Daily Graphic. Professor Okoye condemns 4 million Ghana cedi development fee. The Citizen newspaper. SA Airports death traps. The Sun. He's smart, good-looking and funny, but even David Beckham snores. The Guardian. Celebrations after Hamas and Israel agree first phase of deal. And the Daily Mail. Blessed is the peacemaker. The Times. Trump celebrates art of the everlasting peace deal. All right, so let's go back to This Day newspaper so that we can discuss that. Starting with the first story there, the leading story in This Day. Tinubu names Amupitan as new INEC chairman. If we can pull up This Day, NCS endorses a choice. Well, Professor Joe Amupitan, he's a senior advocate of Nigeria, is now the new INEC chairman. Before his nomination, he was Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Jos. He obtained all his degrees from the same university, and he's also a professor of law with interest in law of evidence, corporate law, corporate governance, and privatization law. In Ogbenga, the last 3 INEC chairmen were professors, and there were Professor Maurice Uwu, we had Professor Atahiru Jega, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, and then another professor, Amupitan. The question is, why do we always choose professors as INEC chairman? I would, hazard a guess. I think that initially the thought is that professors are men of integrity. They could be less partisan, and they should have some credibility in order to oversee the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is a critical arm of the electoral system in this country. What are your thoughts on that?
I think fundamentally it underscores the need for someone with academic and moral sagacity to midwife an all-important project like the political transition of Nigeria. Now we're talking about the off-cycle election in Anambra State and some governorship election coming up next year, and the 2027 presidential election and the general elections. So when we look at Professor Amupitan, it resonates some concerns actually, but it's like a catch-22 situation. Coming up with someone with that kind of a high pedigree, academic credentials, professor of evidence and all that. And on the other side, people are wondering that why can't you take someone that has an electoral, managerial, and electoral administrative experience. So that's one dilemma on one side. The other side is the task before him, the process in which he came in which is nominated. We saw a very easy, unanimous, it's a very questionable process for someone who is to midwife such integrity. The institutions in the passage of this endorsement should wake up to a thorough scrutiny. The Council of State should be able to do a lot of scrutiny in this process. Though there have been no known controversy hanging around Professor Amupitan. He's expected to face the Senate, and we know that Senate has some committee, like the Committee on Fraud and also the Committee on INEC, Electoral Matters. They should also be able to do some beyond the take-a-bow culture. And now, looking at Professor Amupitan, there's a lot of question and clear-cut task before him. He should be able to extricate himself from the extraneous pressure of politicians that brought him into power. Then we also look at the INEC guidelines. He should be able to stand up to the reforms. And don't forget that this is an institution that is dogged by a lot of controversy, low voter confidence, public trust deficit, and many other things, pressure to get it right in our electoral process. Technological failure is also another thing that he would need to do. And by doing this, he needs to submit the Beavers and the IRF model to public scrutiny. It is very important to promote and enhance the integrity of the process. So many of these questions are asked, and when it comes to election too, he should be able to stand firm and not pander to the pressures of those that brought him, or those that contributed in his emergence. For instance, you look at the approval of the 14 political associations. He should be able to create a level playing ground for these people. So many of these issues, he has his work cut clear before him, actually. But we wish him the best of luck.
Yes, yesterday I was watching the interview with some people that were very close to him on a rise. And the sense was that he is a man of integrity, dedicated, hard worker, has vast experience. And he will be closely watched because it's a very controversial seat that he's going to sit on, and he has a big job ahead of him. He will face several challenges, and these challenges will test his competence and independence. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that office. How will he handle the pressures? Is he going to buckle under political interference? You know, people that know him said that he's someone who is committed to serving Nigeria, and someone who is also very finicky about his name, you know, his credibility. So he's going to do a lot to make sure that, you know, he stands the test of time. But it's going to be facing a lot of troubles, managing, you know, INEC and supervising the technical aspects of it. We've had problems in the past in terms of technology. We had the Beavers and IREV and transmission of resource. These are some of the things that Professor Ojo Amupitan would have to deal with by the time he is confirmed by the Senate. Everybody will be watching closely. Let's move on to, now we have other stories in this day. There is that story on security forces arrest armed robbers involved in death of Arise News channel anchor Somtochukwu Maduagu, and we hear that 12 people were arrested over that death. They tried to stop her from jumping, according to them, and they said that they shared 200,000 each. That's each suspect among them. Those that were arrested include Shamsuddin Hassan from Katsina. There was Hassan Isa, 22, from Zaria, Kaduna; Abubakar Al-Kamu, 27, Sani Sirajo, Makshur Jamilu, and Suleiman Badamasi, among others. They are also from Katsina and Kaduna. The robbery occurred around 3:30 a.m. in the morning when the apartment building was invaded. The suspect, Shamsuddin Hassan, confessed to shooting the security guard, Barnabas Danlami, when he tried to stop them from gaining entry. Another suspect, Sani Sirajo, claimed he tried to hold Sami from falling off the 3-story building but could not. Hassan admitted that he drove away with the victim's white Honda CR-V after the operation. A fabricated AK-47 rifle, 36 rounds of live ammunition, and other locally made pistols were recovered from them. What a story, Benga. At least they have been apprehended. Everyone was looking forward to it, so they now have to face the law.
Frankly speaking, this opens so much vicarious outlets within me. I wonder, this could have been everyone. This could have been anyone. Yes. And more fundamentally, we say kudos to the Nigerian police for rising up to this occasion. But it's also, that's on one side. On the other side, it could have been better if this was prevented. Looking at the expose that comes from this investigation, we understand that they found some weapons, like fabricated AK-47, 36 rounds of live ammunition, a locally made pistol, and many other things that could help this investigation. The intention of these robbers, I think, needs to be probed because we also got that information that about 12 of them or so got 200,000. The currency was not specified if it was dollars, pounds, or naira. But whichever way, it shows that this gang must have acted on a tip-off. So the security agency is, and when you look at the assembly, the lineup of these people involved, you look at their origin, their state of origin, it shows that this could have been an effect of a spiral wave of banditry, because many of them from Malum Fashe in Katsina State, one from Maiduguri, about 6 of them from Katsina State, and mainly the north. So it shows that the federal government needs to tackle the wave of banditry in the Northwest and the violent extremists, because it could turn into different things. And they need to also be concerned about the particular their strategic retreats, because when they feel the heat coming from a particular location, there might be a tendency for them to shift base, their operational base, to other areas. So this is what we have seen so far. But I think the police need to dig deep into this investigation and a strong note of warning and signal that this kind of activity would not be tolerated in the FCT or in any part of the country.
A lot of work for the police to do there. Last story in this day newspaper: Nigeria mourns as paragon of integrity. Christopher Kolade dies at 92, very ripe old age. Says he was exceptionally brilliant and statesmanly. He was a towering figure in Nigerian public life, known for his principled leadership and lifelong dedication to service. He was a broadcaster, diplomat, educator, and business luminary. May his soul rest in peace, sir.
Amen.
Okay, yes. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, my condolences to his family, and he's someone that I've had personal experience with. I've had some interviews with him, especially when he was appointed to head the Sure P, the controversial subsidy removal program then in 2012. He was brought in because of his perception as an icon of integrity. So to have lost someone like that at 92, not many people know that he was a chief executive and chairman of Cadbury some years ago, and he later became the DG of the National Broadcasting Corporation, now Nigerian Television Authority, and he was later appointed as Nigeria's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, and later he became the head of the Sure P program. And in all these institutions that they've headed is left a strong, towering legacy of excellence and brilliance. Many of the broadcasters still, till his point of that, still look up to him for one reference or the other, or for one counsel or the other. I remember when I was in Voice of Nigeria, my DG normally beckons on him for one counseling or the other, and he was always there to advise. So when you look at someone like this that has such a terrible, it leaves that question: if our current crop of leaders would emulate such person. It's not true that Nigerians don't have people of integrity.
No.
We do have them, and there's so much lessons to learn from them. I say may his soul rest in peace, and may our leaders toil is part of excellence, because this was someone who really left a sterling legacy in his dealings, in his handling of affairs, strategic affairs in the nation.
All right. It is true, I agree with you, that Nigeria does have many other people who have integrity. The only thing is that because a lot of people do not want to be tainted by the system, they shy away from public appointments, and they shy away from politics because they have a lot of at stake, and they do not want to destroy their name. But unfortunately, the more that we give way to people who should not be running the system, we may have no choice, you know, but to deal with it. We cannot complain. Moving on to Daily Independent, Tinubu pardons Herbert Macaulay, Farouk Lawan, Maman Vatsa, 172 others. Vatsa was sentenced to death over a treason charge in 1986. So this is a posthumous pardon by the president. On his part, Herbert Macaulay was in 1913 convicted by the British. We remember that he was one of those who fought for Nigeria's independence. The Ogoni 9, also including Ken Saro-Wiwa, were officially pardoned, and some others serving sentences for fraud. Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was also on that list. All this was on the recommendation of the Presidential Advisory Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy, PACPM. Usually, presidential pardons are exercised by presidents to promote national reconciliation and correct national or possible injustices against people. I mean, it can also serve as a broader purpose, such as fostering unity and, you know, after you have political conflict, reducing prison congestion and all of that. So the president has exercised his right to do so. And this comes with really a lot of moral and political weight. But yesterday I was watching the interview with Omoyele Sowore, the activist, and he was asking the question, if all these people can be pardoned, what happens to Nnamdi Kanu, who has been in prison for 10 years without any conviction? It's a fair ask, Benga, isn't it?
Yeah, looking at the Constitution and
given his health status also.
Yeah, well, I would want to say that looking at the Constitution and also statutorily, the president is empowered with the powers of the prerogative of mercy and what people call the amnesty. And he does so exclusively. Now he had gone through the Presidential Advisory Council, but the powers, he has the power to use his discretion to grant this pardon. But the question is, there is a lot of force majeure in the Constitution, a lot of unforeseen circumstances that one is assumed that the president will be someone of integrity and who will use his discretionary powers in national interest. So the question is, has he granted this pardon in fair conscience and in national interest? I think that for us to move forward, the country also needs national healing. And many of some of the, like the Ogoni 9, for instance, now is something that resonates a deep hurt within the system that also needs national healing. So he could have used his discretionary powers to pacify the people of Ogoni by granting them amnesty. And also, when you look at the case of Farouk Lawan too, that was among those granted pardon. Sometimes it also resonates the possibility of a force majeure. Perhaps the evidence, as at that time when Honorable Farouk Lawan was sentenced, might not be available at the time of justice.
What are you saying? I mean, he was convicted and
he was convicted.
He served his term.
He served his term.
Yes.
But you know that once you are an ex-convict, there are some fundamental rights that are that you are denied. So
that's why he's being pardoned.
Yes, that's why he's being pardoned. So, but coming to the issue of the Nnamdi Kanu issue, that appears to be a fly in the ointment because many the successive administrations have insisted that carries a lot of security implications and it borders on national security. I wonder if the issue of national security is not being weaponized.
What does that mean,
once it
though?
comes to national security, I would have very little or no say to it. But I hope that in true and fair conscience, that the issue of national security is not being politically motivated or politically weaponized.
Yeah, there have been suggestions that actually there are people who do not want him to be released because he's very popular in the Southeast. You know, he might become, you know, a problem in quote for some politicians. But you have to also have to ask, you know, yourself about the country. What does justice mean to Nigeria? Dispensing justice to people. If you're holding him for 10 years and he has not been convicted. If he has been convicted, that's a different matter. So he's no longer in detention, then he's jailed and he goes to prison. But there's no conviction and you're holding him endlessly for how long? It says something about your justice system and how you destroy the confidence and trust of people in the system. Let's look at another story in Vanguard newspaper. A failed rehabilitation, reps order probe into $18 billion spent on refineries. The refineries, Kaduna, Warri, and Port Harcourt, are not functioning optimally despite the amount spent on them following the adoption of a motion on non-functionality of state-owned refineries moved by Sesi Wengan during plenary. A probe will be initiated. I mean, the House of Representatives here is playing an oversight function. That's their duty. Nigerians deserve to know. They would also like to find out what the current status of the refineries are, look at how public funds were spent, and identify agencies and individuals that were responsible for any infraction. Bringa, very briefly on this.
Yeah, I think the fundamental question is, how did we get there? How did we get here? $18 billion. The very deeper question is, would anyone run his business in that model? Spending something is as simple as having a car and you have spent more than the amount you could have used to buy a new one. No one would conscientiously run his business in that model. 2 decades of $18 billion gone down the drain is a lot for Nigeria, and it calls for a deep rethink. And the narrative of how did we get there, former President Obasanjo said it, and I've mentioned this at on the show a couple of times, on how he approached Shell. And they said that there's so much corruption in the industry and they are not sure of their investments. And a certain man called Aliko Dangote agreed to assemble some investors to put in $750 million in this sector. But that was the twilight of President Obasanjo's exit from power. And what happened? The president then was advised to cancel the process, perhaps on the issue of transparency and the credibility of the privatization plan. But he said something that was very instructive, that you know that government cannot run the refinery.
Right. But that was not under Obasanjo. The president that cancelled that process was President
Umaru. That's why I said after his tenure.
Umaru Musa Yar'Adua.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Leadership newspaper this morning, after World Bank's warning of rising poverty on Nigeria, manufacturers, economists prefer solutions. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN, and economic scholars have asked the government to take practical steps and measures to address worsening living conditions in Nigeria. We heard yesterday that 139 million people are in poverty in Nigeria. So MAN says poverty reduction should be a deliberate government policy focusing on access to food, medicine, and education. But there's also that major story on Nigeria's designation of a country of particular concern. We also had a special report from our correspondent here in Arise, Omar Bazuaye. So what you do need to know about this, if Nigeria becomes a country of a particular concern or tagged as so, we could face significant diplomatic and economic consequences. It also will signal to the world that Nigeria is failing to protect its citizens, fundamental human rights and the freedom of religion. It could damage the country's international reputation. It's not in the best form now, but it could deter foreign investment. It could lead to potential isolation as well. There's restriction of military or trade cooperation. So it's not a tag that Nigeria wants to be dealing with. Senator Ted Cruz, who introduced that bill in the Congress there, is an evangelical Christian, and that is his base. He's very popular. He's a very popular figure in the Christian political right in the U.S. And we have a lot of evangelical Christians in Nigeria, and probably that's one of the reasons why he's doing that. He talks about massacres, and I have to quote what he said. Decisions made by specific people in specific places at specific times. And it says a great deal about who is lashing out now, that a light is being shone on these areas, on these issues, he says specifically. He says the United States knows who these people are, and I intend to hold them accountable. But it would be interesting to have some names named. Nigeria has rejected it. The House of Representatives spoke about it the other day. The Senate has also weighed in, and they're going to talk more about it in plenary next week, Tuesday. But I would think that if names are announced by Senator Ted Cruz, that would add an interesting angle to it.
Yeah, that borders on the need to be quite specific, for reports to be very detailed. It will help a lot so that it won't create a misplacement or misrepresentation of facts. Painting Nigeria with one brush of a country with a particular concern could be very misleading. Like I said yesterday, we've had several pockets of cases of religious attack, but to describe Nigeria as a country where we're experiencing a prevailing religious genocide is very misleading from what I've seen so far. Like the Senate President said yesterday, that we do have killings. We have killings from insecurity, and that is a concern, a deep concern on its own. We are not shying away, and I'm sure the government is not shying away, that this country has serious concerns that borders on the security and the economic state of the nation. Nobody will dispute the fact that that we are not managing a fragile economy with 139 people living below poverty line, using the yardstick of the World Bank of $2.15 per day, shows a yardstick. There's no question about the fact that Nigerians on the street are experiencing an eroding, diminishing value in their purchasing power. There's no question about that. There's no question about the fact that the food inflation is still very high for a 70,000 naira wage earner to live in. There's no disputing the fact. And there's no disputing the fact that there is a policy gap from the policy to the people. And there's a need for this macroeconomic reform to have a real-time microeconomic improvement in the life of the people. But is the government responding to all this? Do they need to do more? Absolutely. But presenting that kind of a report comes with a lot of what one could say an inordinate move. It might be inadvertently, but the way it looks now is as if one is now weaponizing or showing some kind of bias. We need to separate development from politics.
Well, one of the reasons why the U.S. also designates a country, as a country of particular concern is to put pressure on that government to address whatever it is has been pointed out. So now it is left for the Nigerian government. As you said, we do have this crisis or these problems all over the country. It is complex, but you see whole communities in the north central region, in Benue, in Plateau, and Nasarawa wiped out.
Absolutely.
So it is left for the government to address some of these challenges. And on the international scene, let's take one story, is the Gaza story. If we pull up our Daily Express or the Times, let's pull up the Times newspaper. So the deal has been reached. Gaza and Gaza and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, they have signed a deal. This is only the first phase of that deal, and it was initiated by President Trump. One question here: would President Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize he has been looking for? I mean, he has dropped a lot of hints. He has insinuated that he has done a lot to deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I wonder if he will get it.
Yeah, against the life of people that has been lost, I wonder if the Nobel Peace Prize should be of particular concern. I don't think that I think rather that it's disingenuous for you to run your personal ambition to such a humanitarian crisis. But more fundamentally now, coming from this peace plan, is who would rule Gaza? Would the U.S., would Israel and Gaza really come out playing in the release of the hostages? And what about the dead ones? Finding the bodies and all that would resonate deep pain. But anyway, the 20-point peace plan is a way forward, and I hope that no one will politicize the peace deal in Gaza.
All right, so that's where we draw the curtain on the paper review today.